Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be going over my project, which is loosely referred to as Project-Hermit. It is an open world alchemy action RPG style game. I'm going to go over everything having to do with my project in general, nothing too technical, and I hope you all enjoy. My purpose with this project is to build something which I can comfortably and reliably input systems and ideas that I've been thinking about for a long time or working on for a long time. Systems like world generation, procedural plant attribute generation, like how they interact with one another during alchemy and create different effects. World and cultural and trade simulation, kind of like Dwarf Fortress, but I want to be a bit more approachable than Dwarf Fortress. And in that vein, I almost want to be as approachable as like cozy games where everything has a little click and a little bop whenever you interact with the menus, and everything's very satisfying and the world interactions are very satisfying the entire time. I do want to say a small word on what the project is not. It is not my dream game. I hear that a lot in game development, and I'm making my dream game, or I quit my job to make my dream game. While these thoughts are not bad, definitely not bad, and I encourage you to pursue them, I just have been trying to make games like that, the games that I thought were my dream game, and as it turns out I have a lot of dream games, so instead I'm just focused on making something that is enjoyable to make, with no preconceptions and no requirements as to what that is. Just keep a heavy focus on making it as comfortable and fun to play from a player standpoint as possible. A lot of my ideas tend to be somewhat opaque or hard to understand by users, like simulation of trade between cities and simulation of AI lives and things like that. It's not exactly a useful game unless your game's an RTS, and I don't really like RTS games. I do love simulation ideas and things like that, but I want to marry that to my love of comfortable adventure games like A Link to the Past and things like that. Real quick, I'm going to go over a few major parts of this project, nothing in too great of detail, and think of this as more of a bit of an introduction than anything. And please note, any videos on this subject will be more infrequent than the tutorials. Whenever I post something, it will be when I have something meaningful progress to show off. It's kind of the reason why I held off for as long as I have. First off, we're going to go over world generation. So within the game, I focused on, instead of hiding the fact that the player is in just a small chunk of the world and I'm building the world as they go around, I kind of just leaned into it. I'm making the terrain pop up into satisfying bounces, and I even like scale and squish the trees and the like up ahead of the player and make them fall away behind. I think this really helps with the appeal of the project in general, and while it certainly has had its fair share of issues, specifically on the nav grid side of things, I think I will be sticking to it in the future. The world is currently made up of a height map, which in this case is only 64 by 64 pixels, and then I layer a layer of region-based noise over it to give it detail. After that, the biomes are filtered in, and this is a bit of a harder one, to merge multiple biomes, each with their own noise, denoting where they exist in upper and lower height limits. It's a bit of a mess to try and get them all to work with one another, but now I can add biomes with just a couple of clicks, and I just make a new resource file, and the result is, while definitely needing work, definitely also gets the point across. Within the editor, it's a little bit different. So I love the concept of procedural generation, but the downside is that there's a progressively harder mountain to climb to make things believable when it comes to anything not natural. So cities or structures or dungeons or anything like that. Best results I've seen are maybe like Star Citizen, where they have procedurally generated worlds with procedurally placed and modified handcrafted set pieces. So the actual locations are handcrafted, but parts of them are procedurally generated. For my project, I'm going something a fair bit simpler than that. I'm just going to track the editor camera and place the terrain in the editor, and then allow editing and a save option within the editor, with an editor window to keep track of what changes are made, and to save it to a base quote-unquote save file that is built into the executable. It's kind of just what is there that has been changed. This lets me create handcrafted things in the world, which is also procedurally generated, like, for example, dungeons or castles or what have you. I won't be showing the editor tools just yet because they're in the very early stages, but I am currently able to keep track of the camera and the location of the editor camera and spawn the tiles in already. It's a bit buggy, and I stopped working on it for the last couple of weeks to make the actual game portion more presentable, but I will be going back to that soon. So on the other end of the spectrum, we have plant generation, and this is the primary focus of gameplay, is the act of alchemy. So I always loved alchemy games, but I always thought that making alchemy games where you aren't able to go out and use the potions and brews in actual combat wouldn't be very fun to make. So I'm making something that merges the two. To achieve a solid alchemy system, I first have to have families and species. That's what you see here. So we have the species of mushroom and the various families within that mushroom. There's some simple differences to be carried out to all families, and I believe in this forest there's about 5 or 6 families present. In the whole world there are currently 1,000, but that will probably go up as over time as I add in new species of fungi and on out to like flowers and fruit trees and things like that. The part that isn't in is what I'm loosely calling the attribute system. What I will be doing is generating a set number of attributes. The exact number doesn't matter, but let's say for argument there's around 10. Each one has effects in the game that are associated with it, either positive or negative. Healing, haste, slow, damage, flying, water walking, whatever I can come up with. Then each one of these has other attributes that it is either compatible with or incompatible. The attributes are compatible with one another. There's a couple of interactions that can occur, and I need to feel out edge cases, but mostly it would be destroying each other, destroying one of them, one attribute overtakes the other attribute, or both of them being destroyed and a third attribute getting boosted, or both of them getting boosted, so on and so forth, things like that. But the basic idea is you can put multiple ingredients together and take all their attributes and check with their compatibility, and it will do this a couple of times every time you make a potion, and whatever the resulting mix of attributes are after the various attributes have been destroyed or boosted or turned into other attributes, it will see what the resulting effects of those attributes are, and that's what the potion does. And then of course the power is scaled based off of your skill and the value of each of those attributes at the end of the equation. The idea being that yes, there are millions of combinations, but you don't have to learn all of them. You just need to get a feel for the potentially hundreds of compatibilities or incompatibilities that various attributes can have, as well as what resulting effects they produce, what attributes are associated with what effects. Now for combat, the part where you use the alchemy. This one's a little bit less fleshed out, admittedly, than the other part currently. The combat is close to a third-person action game, but a little bit farther zoomed out, with a base camera being locked to an isometric viewpoint. This is very much subject to change. This is almost everything in this project is. I really want to see how I can make it feel better. This actually is the thing I've tested the most, though. It went from strictly being top-down, almost like a twin-stick shooter, to closer to a third-person with camera locked on to a given target. Future possibilities is pushing this more freeform and letting the player have more of a soft lock, where anything directly in front of them leans the camera towards it, but doesn't take complete control. That way you can rotate the camera as you like and have the weapon whenever you have the weapon out. I'm not sure. Any feedback is certainly appreciated, and this will be getting a lot more feeling into once I get other game mechanics up to speed. The character building, it's very much free form. You can pretty much change anything about it with no rhyme or reason as to what race or species or anything that you're doing. And I do kind of like this. Due to the nature of the game being so focused on being comfortable and explorative, I think for now I'll leave this as it is and come back to it in the future. I'm open to any suggestions, but be aware I may well forget them by the time I actually get back to modifying this, so you'll have to remind me. For the future, though, the things I'm most planned on focusing around is core gameplay loop having to do with gathering, alchemy, and fighting monsters. Whenever I have that locked in as being fun and enjoyable, I'll probably move back to the editor and build out the tools to make those monsters have proper homes, like dungeons, etc. I love the idea of dorky fantasy boss battles, and I believe the core gameplay loop of alchemy and fighting needs a real test to put your alchemy and skill against to see how you've progressed and leveled up your character. Following that, I think I'll probably revisit the UI. For now, I think I can have as many items as I want and the subtypes, and mostly families of plants at the moment. So it's very usable at the moment, but it's also very clunky when messing around with it. And I want to smooth out the experience as well as to get nicer and cleaner and get some actual visuals in there instead of just placeholders. A proper map and compass and maybe a clock would go a long way to immersion as well. For now, that's it. Not exactly as technical as I'm sure many of you would like, but there will always be time for that in the future. This video will be followed by more, following my trip, of course. For now, I will see you all in 3 weeks. Thank you everyone for enjoying my video, and as always, have a wonderful day.